Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I want to talk about conflicts. I want to talk about how they are the same as they were before, but they're really different in a meaningful way. And I don't necessarily know how to solve this problem, but I see it as a problem. I think we need to talk about Conclave, Mage Wagons, and the airdrops associated with them. If that sounds interesting, stick around. Let's get into it. So I guess the first thing to say is that they are the same in the sense that this is how we ran with the rebellion. But I think maybe there's lessons to be learned in terms of both what we did with rebellion and then how we're going to move forward beyond Conclave into the next presumable Mage Wagon set, beyond even Conclave, right? Where did it start? With rebellion, we got assets that we could put into Mage Wagons, and they produced that, they reflected a certain degree of investment within that set, and then airdrops flowed from that investment. And the Mage Wagons were like a staking commitment that were thematically battling within the lore of the game to secure us rewards, meaning airdrops. And that made sense and it worked and all that stuff. Plus, by the way, it was really, I think, revolutionary in terms of how we held value in an old set. Rebellion did much better, and partly it did better than prior sets in terms of holding its valuation, because the airdrop mechanism, the reward structure around it, meant that you wanted to keep your rebellion cards as long as you could throughout the rebellion airdrop set. You didn't want to unlock, you didn't want to sell them in preparation for Conclave, because you were still garnering rewards up until the last airdrops, and those last airdrops were amazing. They're summoners, some of which are still defining the meta, Lorcus and Tofu, etc. And so that was exciting, and I think I still stand by the fact that Mage Wagons are great. But then from there we leap forward. We said we're going to hold Rebellion up into the new modern with Conclave Arcana by saying that the Mage Wagons would have a place for Rebellion cards. So you could stake earning Zyrax, the Emberglace, using Rebellion assets. And yes, there was a reduced return on those rewards, meaning an equivalent Conclave legendary and a Rebellion legendary of equal BCX would garner, the Rebellion would garner half the productivity, half the HR, which is the production of airdrops for the new Conclave set. So it's not as good, but they have valuation. And that utility was another factor, or a part of the factor why Rebellion held its value. And that's all good. That's great stuff. And I hope in some sense we keep doing that moving forward. But there are counterbalances or there's other sides to the coin. It's not just all roses, because clearly, I've got a big investment in Splinterlands Conclave Arcana, $5,000 US. I'm going to show you that in a moment. And I'm going to get 5 airdrops on the first airdrop. And by the way, I would expect my productivity to drop as some of these, as we get toward the end of these airdrops, because usually you need more and more collection power, HR, in order to generate more and more of these airdrops. And so I guess the short conversation that we're trying to have here is this a system working? Because man, $5,000 US, and I'm going to get 5 copies of this airdrop card. I've got a lot of investment, man. Most people aren't going to do that. And yet, is that good? Like, is it okay that airdrops are for, people who are doing $10,000, $20,000? That seems a little off to me. And I think the problem isn't just out of what Rebellion did and how we wrote value forward into that through the mechanism I just described. It's probably more primarily out of the black foils and how they produce a disproportionate amount of collection power. If we come in here, we go to buy cards, and we just look at Conclave Arcana, and then we go into reg, foil, legend. No, let's go common, just for easy. Let's look. A common step stalker Conclave card is going to produce 5 CP per. No, you know what? We got to go max. Let's do it this way, so I can show it easiest. 1 legendary. Can I see a max legendary? That'd be great. I might have to go to my own set. See right there, a max legendary of this Desolation. It's a legendary card from the Conclave set. Is going to produce 5,775 collection power. That's going to translate into the HR within the Mage Wagon, and that's going to produce, actually not very many airdrop points. truth be told. I'm hearing from, people like Stever and bigger voices in the game that really there's some of the highest investors in the game aren't even staking a card unless it's doing, 5,000 CP, which is in my mind crazy because I've got 500 CP cards on my Mage Wagons. And we got to think through what that means because the Mage Wagons have the cost of maintenance if they produce something and then they're going to break. And so it probably is at some point not worth it to compete for these airdrops with these 500, these 600, maybe 1,000 CP. I feel like that's pointing towards a problem, but we're getting ahead of ourselves because we need to point toward why there is so much more competition for these airdrop points, because the issue is that there's still only going to be 3,000 airdrops. The team has said, look, we dropped about 3,000 copies of the Rebellion legendaries and the airdrop legendaries, and therefore we want to kind of stay similar to that print rate to make the new Conclave legendaries that are being airdropped equally valuable to the Rebellion cards. I guess that makes sense. But at the same time, we've way increased our collection power and therefore the HR capacity from Conclave, not because of regular cards, commons, rares, epics, legendaries, not because of gold foils, simply because of black foils. This legendary regular foil is 57.75 as it's maxed out. If I go in here and I look at a black foil version of any one of the legendaries, they're all the same, right? They're actually not even going to be. Is there any on the market? I need one to be on the market. There we go. This is a Filthy Scavenger. It's a max level because all black foils are max level. And it's 262,500 CP. Let's just quickly do the math on that. I said it was 5,700 on... So we're going to go I'm going to bring up the calculator. 262,500. And we're going to go divided by 5,775. It's 45 times more collection power. 45 times more collection power. That is translating to an insane amount of extra airdrop points. And I get it, and yet it's a problem for most players. What do I mean? It's a problem for most players because most players are not going to have access to some of these black foils. Maybe you don't have any black foils. If you don't have any black foils, you're not getting airdrops. I mean, I've got thousands and thousands of dollars in this system. Let's go over here and we go my cards, and we just look at Conclave specifically, and we go, I've got $5,200 worth of list price on the Conclave only, or $5,700 market price Conclave only, 600,000 CP burn value there, 102,000 production points. It's a pretty good collection, by the way. Like, not everything's maxed out, but it's a pretty strong collection. I'll tell you also, comparatively, I had about $2,500 US in Rebellion, and I produced more airdrops. So it's like half the value used to give me the same amount of return in terms of airdrops. And by the way, my Mage Wagons didn't used to break. And so I understand why we want Mage Wagons to break. I even stand by that being a good idea. I understand why Conclave has black foils and black foils have more collection power and therefore HR. That makes sense. I understand why we let Rebellion carry value into the Mage Wagons within Conclave. That makes sense. But I think the big problem is a major tripping hazard or difficulty or oversight, and it comes not necessarily in the form of black foils directly, but in the distinction between black foils, gold foil arcanes, and black foil arcanes. Practically. And if you don't know, let's quickly say that within Conclave they're not just regular foils or gold foil editions. Those are the basic. Every set have always had those. But now we have gold foil arcanes, which have this shimmering. They have the gold border, but they have the shimmer. And then there's the black foils, which are not. They're matte. They don't have the shimmer. And then there's a black foil arcanes, which do have the shimmer. And I think this might have been a mistake in terms of. I think what many people thought originally, myself included, was that the gold arcanes would be better than the black foils. That the tier would go regular foil, gold foil, black foil, gold arcane, and black arcane. Why do I say that? Because gold arcane has the shimmer. And if that had been so, even if I was wrong, I think no matter how you imagine it, there has to be a division or a tier between these things. Because here's the reality. A black foil and a black foil arcane are producing the same collection power. I just showed you that filthy. There are no black arcane gold legendaries on the marketplace. Let's come into Splinterlands. Come into item. Let's go cards. No, I think we had to market. So this is a black arcane common, 25,000 collection power. If I come back to market and I look at a black common, 25,000 collection power. That's the problem. We talk about there being too much collection power. We talk about there needs to only be 3,000 print of each new airdrop. We talk about how we don't want to overprint the new airdrops because that'll diminish the valuation of Conclave as well as the airdrops themselves. All of that makes sense. Everything makes sense except for one major issue. The print rate, the power issuance on these different cards. Why, if a black arcane is more powerful, more rare, more special, does it have the same collection power as a black arcane, a black foil? A black foil and a black arcane should be different. They are different in terms of print rate. They are different in terms of the visual, coolness. They are definitely different in the price range. I just don't understand why we said to ourselves, the black have to be, the same amount of CP. And by the way, gold arcanes are the same CP as a gold. That's a separate issue because the gold arcanes I'm saying the gold foil arcanes are probably too low in collection power. But that's a separate conversation for a different video because that would increase the collection power inflation, which would mean there'd be even more airdrops being printed theoretically, or they'd be harder even to get them than they are now. But I think the most logical plan for the future would be regular foils are what they've always been. Gold foils are what they've always been. Gold arcane should be like 25% more or 50% more than golds. And then black should be another 25 or 50% more than that. And then black arcane should be another 25 or 50% more than that. And those are totally random numbers. Crunch it however you however you see fit. But there seems no logical reason why $100, $130 common is producing the same amount of airdrops as a $700 common. Why is a 1 of 10 or 1 of 1 legendary black foil arcane producing the same as a 1 of 50 or 1 of 100 legendary black foil? I don't understand it, and this seems to in some ways have broken the airdrop system. I think the airdrop system is flawed in this way, and I think ultimately it's causing massive ramifications for the average player who has put in hundreds of dollars into the game and who's desiring to see that they have a chance at getting some of these airdrops. I've put $5,000 into this thing and I'm going to get 5 copies of this card. That seems crazy. I heard Steve saying he's put in $8,000 and he's going to get 4 copies of this card. That must be because Steve isn't running as many of the mage wagons as I am, because he's got to have better cards than me, I would think. I also know, some people are going to get lucky and get black foils. I got a few black foils. I traded for a few extra black foils because I see this problem or this situation. I've recognized before now that the black foils are going to disproportionately reward us. And so I've made some efforts to come through and I buy these up because I recognize that I always said if the common black foils are going to be around $100, that's going to be a real bargain. They've really held around 120 and they haven't really slipped lower than that, with very few exceptions on the commons. And with the rares, 300, 350 seems like a real steal of a deal. And then, I don't really ever look at the epics or the legendaries because I just don't have that kind of money. But these are valuable, man. They're very valuable. And this is where you're going to see your airdrop production grow. If you buy a few of these, you're going to spend a few $100 on these, but they're going to produce so much more. Like I said, a black foil common is going to give you 25,000. A regular maxed out common. Let me quick. I think it's 2,200. Can I see one? Look at that. 2100 CP for a max ganache excavator. So it's 12x. It's 12x CP from the black foil. So look, it's going to cost $20 for this one card. It's going to cost $130 to get a that's a 6x cost for a 12x airdrop return. Do you see? And so the mechanic here is broken, because really the desire with Mage Wagons was that we wanted to incentivize investment and partner, like playing in the game. We wanted people to be invested, to see that they were active in the ecosystem. And holding several $1,000s worth of cards should reflect that. When it becomes the case that you need to gamify ownership, where black foils are the pathway to success in this one dimension of the game, but that's not really reflective of really being deeply invested and integrated within the game. You're just collecting pieces to maximize returns in the airdrops. You aren't collecting a deck to play within the game. That's where something has gotten twisted. And again, this is critical, but it's not, this is criticism from me, but I hope it's clear that I say this out of a place of like, I think there's pathways to improve this. I don't understand why black foils and black foil arcanes are the same amount of CP. Somebody explain it to me. I don't understand why gold foils and gold foil arcanes have the same amount of CP. I do understand they're intensely scarce and rare compared to the regs. And so even the black foil should have an increased, maybe it's double the CP. I don't know. By the way, I've been buying these things, so I don't want their CP to be dropped, but I just don't understand how this is good for the game. Because ultimately what we're talking about is a reduction in the number of airdrops for the average person, and even meaningful investments in the game of Splinterlands within the sense of Conclave Arcana are going to have reduced returns from the perspective of airdrops because of this new mechanism. And it's not anything about how Rebellion worked, and it's not anything about how Mage Wagons are repairable, and it's not anything about how black foils themselves have broken the system. It's only strictly that for some reason a $100 common black foil is getting 25,000 CP, which is the same as a $700 black foil arcane common. And that makes no sense. There's no logical connection between those two things. They're not both black foils. One's like a tier 1 black foil and one's a tier 2 black foil. And they should not have the same CP, because everybody and their dog, like if you got, like there was so many black foils, and we comparatively, like from if you compare it to how many black foil arcanes there are, it's so many more. This was a major oversight, and I don't know if we can tweak it for this set now. Like maybe we change how much CP black foils have versus how many black foil arcanes get. Maybe black foil arcanes stay at that $25,000 for the common, 25,000 CP for the common, and maybe the black foils get cut in half. I don't know. But this doesn't make any sense. And in my mind, it's largely because of the disproportionate handouts of black foils to the best of the best, or the biggest investors in the game, and how crazy those CP returns are on those assets. Plus, if I knowing the people, then the individuals that are involved, the people who are involved at the highest levels, let's go leaderboard. The Brave Tofus, the Vugduses, I bet they went up and bought. Every time you guys sold a $100 black foil, they bought it probably. Brave Tofu invested a huge amount of money, and he deserves rewards. I'm not saying he should get less chances. I just think in a proportional sense, I don't think he should get less. I just think he probably played the system the smartest way possible, and he should receive those rewards. So I actually don't think we should change it for Conclave. But I think moving forward, we have to learn from this, because this is not optimized. It makes no sense that a black foil common, which is easy to acquire, I got 3 or 4 of them in my pack openings, are going to produce the same amount of CP as a black foil arcane, which can be like a 1 of 4 or 1 of 1 in some situations. I think this is a major oversight. And even though I would love to wait for the next set to fix this problem, because I don't want to stir the pot in this moment, I kind of don't know how we ever do that. Because here's the problem. Are we going to just change the next set where black foils from the next set are worth a fraction of the CP that they are within Conclave Arcana? I guess we could, but you got to admit that sounds messy. You're gonna affect the value proposition of those black foils from the next set if they don't carry the same amount of CP as the Conclave. And so maybe it's cleaner to just put through a proposal and change it. Believe me, I will suffer if that happens. But I think this is a major oversight, and I think it's causing it's causing a piece of pushback and frustration with the conflict set, which is something we don't need right now in terms of audience perspective, joy with the game, exuberance towards what's happening. This should be exciting, not frustrating. This should be a moment of celebration, because you're going to get these airdrops and you're going to get these cards and they're awesome. Not, hey, this sucks because, man, some people are getting hundreds of these airdrops and I'm getting 4 or 5 and I put in thousands of dollars. Again, I put $2,500 into Rebellion. I got 5 or 6 Rage. That was the first one that came through. I'm going to get 5 Ember Glace guaranteeds, and I put in twice as much money. Something's wrong there. And then my Mage Dragons are going to break. Another financial consideration, but a separate video. Let's leave it there, guys. I really think something needs to be thought through and tweaked, either now or at least moving into the future. I think the problem is exclusively an error in the collection power associated with black foils and gold foil arcanes and black foil arcanes. Let me know in the comments whether you agree, disagree. What are your thoughts on this topic? Have an amazing day. God bless.